Good afternoon, everyone. Climate research institutes have told us that a warming Arctic pushed all this record cold across the northern hemisphere. How is all that sea ice gaining if it's record warm? Freeze warnings out for Miami over the next couple of days. Lakes forming in Saudi Arabia yet again. EF4 tornadoes. Oh, those are waterspouts. Canary Islands, tropical paradise, snowing. Somewhere under there buried is Russia. And we have to believe the experts, by the year 2300, rising seas are going to threaten homes with less than a 2-meter rise in seas. Wait a second, there's a disconnect there. But those 4 waterspouts at the same time off of the coast of Thailand, that's real. Yet the realization that a decline in solar activity has no effect on our tiny little planet, that doesn't hold water either. And during these uncertain times, I've teamed up with My Patriot Supply long-term food storage. A nice, affordable starter kit, 2-week food supply, 1,500 calories per day, breakfast, lunch, and dinners, plus the 4-gallon storage containers included in that. This is a good first step in getting more self-sufficient. And if you click through the Prepare with ADAPT 2030 page in My Patriot Supply, you can get this starter kit for $75. Please remember there's a limit of 2 per household in this special offer. So the story making its way through the headlines of the global controlled corporate media is that the warming Arctic has pushed some sort of cold front across the US and Canada and Europe and Asia to create these record cold temperatures. Oh wait, and South America and Australia. So we'll take a look into the sea ice here. That red is 4.5 meters, almost 15 meters thick, directly in the North Pole. That's kind of rare in itself. But increasing sea ice would be the opposite indicator of warming temperatures. If it really was warming, this black line, that should not be back to at least the averages of the 2004 to 2013 baseline for Arctic ice coverage. And as we progress through the next few weeks, it's going to blast right through that. Then what are they going to say? Oh, the heat's causing more ice. You can already see the unfurling of the excuses for cooling on our planet. Now, how are they going to explain this cold anomaly here? They're looking literally for hard freeze warnings far south Florida over the next 2 days. I understand there's heat out to the west. Think about this. I'm going to bring you over here to the average Miami temperatures. If the average temperature low is 20 degrees Celsius, and they're looking at 20 degrees Celsius below normal temperatures, that brings it into a serious, water freezes into a solid in southern Florida. And progressing through the week, then Cuba gets even colder, down into something like 10, 12 degrees Celsius below normal. Not Fahrenheit, Celsius. Daytime high temperatures here, where the blizzard is raging across the Midwest and the Central Plain states, full-on massive high temperatures, 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And the cold front's going to keep on plunging and plunging all the way through Florida. So take a look at these temperatures here, getting down into the 20s as we progress through the 26th, 27th, 28th. The southeast U.S., not normal at all. But what I will say is, as we move through the first week of December, this anomalous warm that's above the Canadian border, you see that ribbon type of colors between the reds, the orange, the blue, and the purples? You don't want to be there. In any way, shape, or form do you want to be under that weather front moving. This will be the most extreme weather that you will experience in your entire lifetimes if you are anywhere where that front passes through. Word to the wise, take shelter when this thing passes. We're going into once in a 400-year, once in a 200-year event these storm systems are bringing. So it will be unusual. The children's blizzard would be a good place to start to understand how this front's going to push through. Record cold hits America, and here we are, yellow-orange arrow. Well, that's solar cycle 24 at the bottom there. That's even lower than the Dalton minimum. But don't worry about that. The sun has no effect on our planet at all. That sun, 1.2 million times larger than our Earth. Magnetic fields have nothing to do. CO2 is going to control everything. Don't worry about the big yellow thing off to the left there. It's okay. But anybody who does study history and takes a look back at when solar activity decreases, you notice there's a decline in crop production as well. The magnetosphere on our Earth weakens, jet streams go out of flow, electromagnetic influences on our sun, and some of the first things you would expect are these vortices within our atmosphere. We saw this over Italy, Croatia, and Slovenia last week. Here we are, 4 waterspouts coming off Thailand beaches in November. I really want to wide this out for you here, so take a look at that. Anybody who understands atmospheric circulation knows this is such an outlier, so rare, that this would be inclusive of a new chapter on how the atmosphere is working now. And as I've said before, as the atmosphere does continue to change due to our weakening sun, those little water spouts are going to turn into EF5 tornadoes over water. Look at this right here. That's not a cloud cell dumping immense rain. This is a water spout, or 2 that you can see. Now, if this was anywhere in Kansas in the springtime, what type of tornado category would you give this? I tell you, this is not normal what we're seeing right now. The amplification is happening and the media is trying to deflect. So you do not put the causation with the decline in solar activity. We're only in the very first years of the changes. Al Gore assured us that snow would be a thing of the past. I encourage you to rewatch An Inconvenient Truth and check out the statements that were made back then. And here we are, 2 feet of snow. A record breaker in France, in Lausanne. But I do want to drop you back a single week, though, because this capture coming out of Romania is stunning. This is quintessential, beautiful European snowfall into Russia, which is buried somewhere underneath this blizzard that's been raging for several days. I know there's a road, and something else there, a few bus stops, probably buried, but never mind. Global warming will take care of all the snow. But these ice flowers or something spectacular happening at the same time. They've been photographed from the 14th of November all the way until now, and the size of these seems to be increasing. And these ice flowers, if you will, are continuing to spring out of cracks in the ice on lakes, on top of pavement, and other random locations. So we'll see how much these really grow through the next few weeks. It's all about the humidity in the air. It hasn't gotten that dry there yet, so these ice crystallization, I guess, patterns, if you will, are able to form right now while the humidity is still in the air. This will probably cease in another month or so, but it's spectacular at the moment. Now on to another anomaly. Canary Islands. Warm tropical holiday destination for those bound for sun and fun while Europe freezes. Oh wait, sorry, this is the snowfall on Tenerife. Tropical islands, not dusted, covered in snow. And we'll move on to Saudi Arabia, where you would think dry deserts, camels. No, here we go. This is a car actually driving through the floodwaters of Saudi Arabia. Northern Saudi Arabia, not southern. So those of you naysayers, well, the south is still super dry, except for all the lakes that formed when the cyclones came by and doused the place, not Arabia once, but twice, but 3 times this year, and the lakes are reforming down in Oman and Yemen and southern Saudi Arabia, and the deserts are blooming again. Not that part. No, this is northern Saudi Arabia, where they just got 2.5 feet of rain, which follows on years worth of rain in Kuwait City 2 weeks ago. The same event happened in Saudi Arabia in the same location 2 weeks ago, and somehow it's all CO2. Nothing to do with the sun that's forecast into a grand solar minimum. The blizzards are raging across the Central Plains, Midwestern states. All-time record snowfalls in Chicago, of all places. That's one of the snowiest cities in America, and it just broke its all-time record snow record. But it's got to be CO2. And here the experts, the ones that are telling you it's CO2, are now predicting that in the year 2300, that rising seas are going to engulf the coastlines. I really look at the journalistic integrity of this and say, really? Really? You're going to put out a news article about something that's almost 200 years in the future? Really? Reel it right back to right now where it has something to do with CO2. This is yellow journalism at its very best. And with all this happening, now people of the world are starting to rise up. And if you think of really this much small rise in petrol prices is bringing out this much animosity and fighting with the government in France, can you imagine when their food supply and your food supply is at risk of people not being fed? And this is what's happening already. So you can see the progression now. This is, I think, is a test by the elites, if you will, to see what the citizens will bond together to react in a certain fashion to policies put forth by governments to restrict flow of good A, B, or C. And the romaine lettuce scare, that's something different. They're just saying, hey, it's contamination because there's massive shortages of romaine. So they're trying to dissuade you from even wanting to buy it by saying it's contaminated. So you won't ask any questions. You won't even want the romaine. Petrol prices, fighting with the police in the streets, riot gear out. And again, this is not something that is so much life or death. I know it is to a point, but it's really not in terms of food scarcity anywhere close. So what you see happening here, and we're not even close to where the food shortages are yet. We're not even close to the economic upheaval that's coming due to switching of spending patterns in just the general populace of the globe. And this is happening in France already. This should be a massive wake-up call for everybody out there that's looking. Because what's on our doorstep is the descent into the lowest solar activity in the last 400 years. Please take away one thing from this video. Go back, read the history of the Maunder minimum. That's spelled M-A-U-N-D-E-R, minimum. Please understand the societal changes that took place at that time because they're going to take place right now again. And if you understand what happened then, you can get a really good indication of what's going to happen again right now as we progress through. If the French riots because of fuel shortages are already here and we're getting snow down in the tropics and all these vortice events across our planet in terms of precipitation and just sky formations and strangeness, we are at the point of resetting our society. So I thank you so much for watching the video, listening to what I had to say, and please prepare.